Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here. I appreciate your patience and graciousness as I was supposed to have a co-speaker, but she was unable to come because of the storm tomorrow. She has a coastal home. So I'm on my own. So hopefully you can navigate through this with me. Um, Before I begin though, I just wanted to kind of share a little bit of something that was on my mind as I was creating this educational framework for us as a way for all of us to kind of navigate through together. I met many of you, but my husband Mark and I have 4 children. We have JD, Luke, and Ryan, 3 boys, and then Maggie is our daughter who has NCBRS. And I think we all can share in the complexities of raising a child with a disability. The hours of research, the therapies, the endless navigation of the medical system, the constant balancing act of being present for all of your children while juggling so many needs that often feel invisible to the outside world. The emotional, financial, and social adjustments that most people never see, and that quiet, familiar ache of feeling like no one else really gets it. It made me think of a poem that's always resonated with me, and I just love before I read it for everybody to pause and just look around the room. 9 years ago, when we reached our diagnosis day, if you had told us we'd be here surrounded by all of you, it really would have been hard to believe. I imagine many of you have felt the same immediate shift, that before and after moment in life. Maybe you were blindsided shortly after birth. Maybe your day came after years of searching for answers. Or maybe you're still in the haze of just recently finding out. For us, when Maggie was first diagnosed, it was a mix of relief and grief. Relief that we finally had an answer, that we weren't imagining things, that there was a name for all the things we've been searching for. But that relief brought grief, not because of Maggie, but for the life we'd envisioned for her, for our family. And that's hard to explain, that feeling to other people, that feeling of your heart feeling so full and so broken at the same time. One moment, you're grateful to finally have the answers, and the next, your morning dreams you didn't even know you had. The ground shifts beneath you, and suddenly everything familiar looks different. And yet, here we are all together, finding that beauty in the unexpected. If there's one thing that's carried us forward, it's been just that, finding the beauty in the unexpected. When I look around this room, it's not just your faces that I see, not just your names. It's all those stories behind them. The comments and the answers to questions from Facebook that literally no one else in the world has ever had for us, all of you. The encouragement you offer to one another, the patience to answer the same questions even when you're far beyond that stage of life, the sincerity in the replies, and most of all, the love. There's a quiet knowing here that for every post, there are countless others silently cheering that person on, celebrating a milestone, or sending strength on a hard day. In 9 years of being on this site and a part of this community, I cannot think of a single time when the tone of this group has been anything other than caring, compassionate, and filled with a genuine desire to help. That is rare in this world. And it all deserves a heartfelt applause for Lee, who set this all up for us. We'd be hard-pressed to find somebody who could set a better tone, someone more gracious, kind, and generous with his time, volunteering thousands and thousands of hours to manage a group for all of us that brought us here today. So thank you, Lee, and thank you, Nola, his scientific sidekick, for being such an incredible team. Many people inspire me, but you two definitely stand at the top. So there truly is beauty in the unexpected, and it starts with the people you meet along the way. To every parent, grandparent, sibling, and caregiver who made the extraordinary effort to be here this weekend, thank you. I know the logistics, the sacrifices, the energy, the planning it takes to make a trip like this possible. Your presence is a gift to the community and a reminder that although our journey is rare, we aren't alone. It's an honor, and it's deeply healing to share this time and space with all of you. So before we dive into the winding journey of education, I wanted to share a little poem with you. Some of you might be familiar, but something that has always resonated with me is the Welcome to Holland poem. I'm often asked to describe the experience of raising a child with a disability, to try to help people who who have not shared that unique experience, to understand it, to imagine how it would feel. It's like this. When you're going to have a baby, it's like planning a fabulous vacation to Italy. You buy a bunch of guidebooks, make your wonderful plans, the Colosseum, the Michelangelo, the gondolas in Venice. You may learn some handy phrases in Italian. It's all very exciting. After months of eager anticipation, the day finally arrives. You pack your bags, and off you go. Several hours later, the plane lands. The flight attendant comes on and says, "Welcome to Holland." Holland, you say? What do you mean, Holland? I signed up for Italy. I'm supposed to be in Italy. All my life, I've dreamed of going to Italy. But there's been a change in the flight plan. They've landed in Holland, and there you must stay. The important thing is that they haven't taken you to a horrible, disgusting, filthy place full of pestilence, famine, and disease. It's just a different place. So you must go out and buy new guidebooks and must learn a whole new language. And you will meet a whole new group of people you would have never met otherwise. It's just a different place. It's slower paced than Italy, less flashy than Italy. But after you've been there for a while and you catch your breath, you look around and you begin to notice that Holland has windmills, and Holland has tulips, and Holland even has Rembrandts. But everyone you know is busy coming and going from Italy. And they're all bragging about what a wonderful time they've had there. And for the rest of your life, you will say, yes, that's where I was supposed to go. That's what I had planned. And the pain of that will never go away, because that's a significant loss. But if you spend your life mourning the fact that you didn't get to Italy, you may never be free to enjoy the very special, the very lovely things about Holland. Thank you. So that brings us to the journey of education and navigating early intervention, education, and transition planning. So we're going to do a quick little overview of that process. So we're calling this educational decision making. And I just want to preface this by saying I will go a little bit quickly just because I know we want to try to fit in a few things, but I'll be here afterwards. And Terry Williams is an amazing resource for all things education too, as Luke has been a little bit further down the path. And Terry was a math interventionist for this intermediate unit in Pennsylvania, so very experienced as well. So I do have a teaching background. I've taught elementary education and I now teach special education in middle school. And we've navigated also from the parental side with Maggie. I just want to start off by saying all of our paths are obviously very different. You know, some of us choose to homeschool, public education, private education. Some of us have done all three over the years at some point. So this presentation is going to be through the lens of traditional public education in the United States, and there is a little bit of a Pennsylvania bias just for some legality purposes, but it is applicable to most states, most of these items on here. So today's topics: interacting with school teams, how you qualify your eligibility for special education, how evaluations are done, navigating IEPs and IFSPs, 504 plans, and then we'll have a little bit of a Q&A session during our roundtable time after the photo. So interacting with school teams. This little image here breaks up all the people that you might come in contact with when you have a child with special needs in education. So traditionally, many children would have one classroom teacher, but on our journey, we meet a lot of folks along the way. Social workers, principals, school psychologists, special education teacher, regular education teacher, OT, PT, lots of intervention therapies along the way. Key school team members. So early intervention will be when your child is prior to kindergarten. So from birth until they transition to kindergarten, that qualifies you for early intervention services. So you would have a service coordinator, special instructor, related service provider, and then you might interact with the supervisor of special education as well. As you move on to school age, you would have the following: classroom teacher, a case manager, you'd interact with the guidance counselor, principal, school psychologist, and a supervisor of special education. When you communicate with anybody, it's important to put it in writing. So always document what you need or what you are sharing in writing. If it's not documented, even the loveliest people, everybody wants the best for the kids, but if it's not documented, it's hard to keep track of it for yourself and on the school end. And if it's not documented, it didn't happen in the eyes of a school district. If a conversation happened in person, make sure to just follow up with an email just to clarify what you went over. Helpful to go to meetings prepared with a list of concerns along the way. Special education eligibility. So a student, in order to qualify for special education, must meet one of 13 disability categories identified under federal law IDEA. That child also would have to require specially designed instruction to receive additional educational benefits. So a medical diagnosis such as NCBRS is not the only consideration when it comes to receiving services in an educational system. You need to prove that you have an educational need to receive those services. So when you do, even though they're the result of having NCBRS, your child's needs might be different from another child with NCBRS. So that's under the umbrella of education. They need to shake out what services you actually need. So it will be under that umbrella. We'll talk a little bit more about how you qualify as a parent of a student with NCBRS. So disability categories traditionally under the law would include everything that you see here. Our category, since it's so rare for our daughter Maggie, and for many of you who've navigated this as well, would fall under other health impairment. So what that means is you would be seeking services. The category would be other health impairment, and the school district would have to determine that because of this other health impairment, your child's learning needs support. So you have to, it's not just the medical component, it also has to be the educational part. So special education evaluations are used to determine if a child meets or continues to need special education services. It also determines when changes need to be met. So that's the tricky part along the way. So you need to have the initial evaluation, and then you'll have reevaluations over the years. If you're just entering the school system and you're not familiar and you have somehow maybe not received early intervention services that would try to transition you into a school system, you can simply send an email and just say you would like to request an evaluation for your student. And here's like a little bit of a framework. And I will definitely share all these documents out afterwards. And I have some other documents to just share as like resources for everybody if you would like to refer to later about some templates and stuff like that to help you along the way. Child find is a law where school districts also do have a duty to look and find students that they think might benefit from special education services. So in the instance of a child who might be overlooked, it is also the school district's responsibility to try to find students that need support. If your district for some reason was to refuse an evaluation, okay, you would just have to request what the reasoning is, and then you can resubmit with further documentation. The evaluation's approved. So now what should you do? So you would be issued a permission to evaluate. And if you're starting to catch on, having a student who receives special education services requires a lot of paperwork. and a lot of time. So you first would receive a permission to evaluate. Then the school district would include assessments that they intend to give, and you would review it carefully, make sure everything is in order before you sign off. The evaluation must be completed and issued to you within 60 days of the date you signed the evaluation or the form. So then you would receive a NORAPE and you would sign that within 10 calendar days, or the placement will not go into effect unless it's their initial placement. If you're not happy with what the school district is recommending for your child, then you would have to request further remediation or due process or mediation and shake that out before you're willing to sign off that you agree with the setting that they are determining would be in the best interest of your child. Never, ever, ever sign any of these items before actually seeing what the setting would be for your child. Okay, you will know if you think it's the right thing for your child. Okay, special education timelines. Schools must reevaluate at least every 3 years or every 2 years if the child has an intellectual disability. And as far as I know, all of our children have qualified as having an intellectual disability. So you would be looking at about every 2 years for reevaluations. They must be completed within 60 calendar days of when you signed it, and summer counts as day one on the summer calendar. IEP team must meet within 30 calendar days to create the new IEP. An IEP is obviously an individual educational plan from the earlier slide, in case we missed saying that. School teams must implement IEP services within 10 days of receiving assigned NORAPE. The IEP team must meet to discuss if your child can receive extended school year services as well. So basically, you are eligible to receive special education services, and that will look very differently for everybody in the room. Okay, there's really no one way to say that this is the exact setting that would fit your child, okay? But there are many options available, and you are legally protected and deserving of services within the public education system that best support your child. The IEP must be reviewed at least once per year at an IEP meeting with the school team. So for younger families, early intervention is really designed to support your child and also the family. So from birth until about age 5, you're able to have community supports, therapies, special instructing, teaching, all those kinds of services. As you transition preschool age and elementary age and beyond, it transitions into an IEP. And those supports are all designed to be implemented within the educational setting. Here's a whole list of forms you'll be required to sign at an IEP meeting. And then this breaks down the sections of an IEP. So an IEP is basically a plan that's going to be the roadmap for your child's educational journey. So your school district, your school team, and you guys will all determine special considerations, present level where your child starts, transition services, if they need testing accommodations, what your goals are, not just academic goals. They could be social emotional goals. So you can have other goals, not just academic. Specially designed instruction, related services, supports for school personnel, educational placement, and then that last part is just related to Pennsylvania. But so goals. So your school team and you will determine what your goals are for your child. Again, everybody in here will have a little bit of a different need and approach to that. An example of a goal might be a speech therapy goal. The goal is to have your student correctly produce the sound for so many times, and that's going to be assessed in the classroom accurately 3 out of 4 times. And that is how you would determine if your child is starting to make progress or not. Okay. you need a baseline. So your school team needs to identify what the baseline is first before you can make the goal of where they're going to go. Here's some examples. So the whole expectation is that the IEP, in an ideal world, would identify your child's baseline, would collaborate with you and discuss what your goals are for your child, if they're having social emotional needs, if they need therapy in addition to educational support. And then you would create this IEP. And then once a year, you would talk about it. And ideally, the progress report would be showing growth. And you at home would also be seeing growth. And ideally, you would be feeling that everything was moving along in the right direction for your child. That being said, more times than not, there might be a part of the IEP where you're feeling that needs aren't quite being met. So maybe you're seeing more behavior issues, or maybe you're having struggles socially, or therapy needs to be increased. So if the student is not making an appropriate rate of improvement, the IEP team is required to respond to a lack of progress by changing the student's programming at any time to support progress. So specially designed instruction would be included, and that refers to the adaptations and accommodations to help support the child in the educational setting so they can be most successful. So just some general ones might be flexible seating, extra breaks, visual supports, communication devices, allow a student to type assignments, different things like that. That will obviously vary on the environment as well. So here's kind of where I think a lot of our hearts lie. Kind of the continuum of educational placements when you have a child with special education needs. So it's framed as students should always be placed in the least restrictive environment. So you want to have your child in an environment where they can grow and learn in the least restrictive way. So traditionally, a regular classroom would be general education. Child doesn't have any needs, so they don't qualify under special education, so they're just regular classroom. They don't have any of these services. When you begin to enter the world of special education, perhaps you're in a regular education classroom, but you have a few modifications. Maybe an instructional aid pushes in, or you receive some extra services just to help speech therapy, OT therapy, things like that, if you're familiar of the educational system from growing up. Maybe you need a little more support, so then we would move down to regular classroom with pull-out services. So maybe you go to another classroom for part of the day for learning support, math intervention, reading intervention, social skills. Maybe that setting's not quite right for your child, so then maybe the team and you decide, or it's recommended to you, that a separate classroom would be a better setting where all students in the classroom have IEPs. You might be familiar with terms life skills or functional skill classrooms. That would be considered separate classroom. Some children would benefit from actually being in a separate school where all students in that school have disabilities. And the public school district would say that we will fund your child to go to a special school based on your child's needs. We cannot provide those services within our school district. We have a list of these schools that we think would be better for your child. You should go tour those schools if that is what is ever recommended to you. And many of them are absolutely amazing, and that might be the best setting for your child. They can also be run by the county. If you're familiar with intermediate units in Pennsylvania, we call them intermediate units. I'm not 100% sure what every state would call them, but that's a very typical term where basically they also provide additional support in these private schools. So it's kind of like a collaboration approach. So at these schools, though, no non-disabled peers would be present. So that would be starting to become more restrictive environment. At the same time, it might be what meets your child's needs better, there's a lot of support. Home education options, so independent study. Sometimes you might be in a medical crisis and your child cannot be in school right now because they medically are too fragile to be in school. You qualify for home school services through public education if you ever find yourself in that situation. So that's something to talk about too. And then the last part would be a most restrictive environment where that might be residential or institutional care. If your child ever really struggles behaviorally or just has needs that are too significant to be met in a traditional school day program, there are some, residential programs. So, and I'm happy to talk more about that when we're informal, standing around the room. Then you start to grow within the school system and your child grows and grows and you get to be about the age of 14. You have to start beginning to think about adulthood when you are a special education parent. So transition goals for special education students need to start being thought about around age 14. Students are eligible to stay in public education until they're 21 years old. But that can look like a lot of different things for all of our kids. And Terry's a wonderful person to talk to about this later on because she's navigated it a little bit. But basically, there are options to stay in your traditional high school until you're 21 years old. Many high schools offer that as an option. Some might have a county school where all children who are staying till 21 might, be in like VOTEC programs and different things like that. And then they also might have a postgraduate program for students who fall into the special education category. So that's the next level. Early exposure is possible to employment ideas. So this is a time when you might be starting to think, what would my child like to do when they're out of high school? That begins at around age 14. You have to start thinking, do they, what are their goals? Do they want to try? We have a large range here. Many colleges and universities are now offering programs for students with intellectual disability. And a lot of research is showing like how beneficial that is for students who want to feel that, sense of belonging in life and purpose and still further their education. And so that might be something that is on your radar. You have to start thinking about that around 14. Maybe your child loves culinary arts. Maybe your child needs more significant care and education support. So that would be all things that you need to look into about that time. So education, training, employment, and then independent living would all be under the umbrella of transition goals. At that time, who should be present in deciding what is best for your child at that time? If possible, your student, because it is their educational journey. So as they get older, it is going to be important to try to figure out what do they actually want to do. Parents and guardians, school personnel, support coordinator, and then there's a few other things here. So there are outside agencies within your county who can help assist with this. So that would be my recommendation, is to look for the groups. One of the ones in Pennsylvania and across the United States is called the ARC, if you're familiar. They have chapters in every county across the United States, ARC, and they can kind of help guide you with life after high school. Education training would ensure that graduation requirements are met. It helps it tailor schedules to meet everybody's needs and then offers employment options. I'm going to speed up here a little bit. So employment, if you have a child who's getting older, it's helpful to find job coaching programs in your area. They would be called job coaching areas or community support programs that kind of expose your child to different things, different experiences. Help highlight the soft skills, paid experiences even. This is a great time for your students to get a job if they're able to do that. Also helps to model independent living skills, self-advocacy skills. Even if your child might not be ever living independently fully, it's still helpful to work on the same skills within a household with your family. So self-advocacy skills, hygiene, activities of daily living, housing, and learning how to navigate transportation. Some tips following IEP meetings: always send your parental concerns in writing following a meeting. Ask that you be copied and pasted in the IEP. Continue to communicate concerns and review all IEP reports for meaningful growth on the IEP goals. Most students in here should qualify to have an IEP. You would qualify under other health impaired, and most students in here would have educational needs. So this wouldn't totally apply to you. If for some reason a district was to say you don't qualify for an IEP, you can qualify for what's called a 504 plan. So basically it does offer services, but it's a little bit less protective, I would say. So you would just request that in writing. In Pennsylvania, this is where I just kind of said that kind of applies to Pennsylvania, but most states would have a special education specialist line. So you can reach out and they can explain federal laws, describe options available to you, and inform parents of the safeguards in place for you. There are also advocates. There's so many layers of support, but it is tricky to navigate if you are trying any of this. You really do learn on the fly. If you're lucky enough to have people in your community who walk before you, I encourage you to reach out to them, because I find that that's the best source of information, is just networking and asking other people when you notice, that it might connect with you and your child. Maybe ask a few questions and say, how did you navigate that? So just to wrap up, supports are available from birth through 21. Evaluations determine which services your child qualifies for. IEPs and 504 plans provide essential educational support. And then I will just wrap up and say it takes a village. Okay, so really reach out to those who've walked before you. And if you ever need something, it's crucial to reach out for an advocate to try to help you navigate along the way. Just lastly, your child is an individual. So even though we all share the syndrome, even though there are many children in this country who receive special education services, your child's needs will be unique, socially, emotionally, and all their educational needs. So my best piece of advice is truly just to follow your heart and yours. You'll know if something doesn't seem to be the right situation for your child. And don't ever doubt yourself to ask questions and to pivot and to try again or try a different setting. And in full disclosure, we've done it all. Maggie's been in public education. We just started a new private school this year to try that. None of them have been 100% perfect. None of them have been horrible. We've had a great educational experience. But when you do navigate a child with special education, I think you'll find that it's just such a journey that takes so many layers into consideration, that it is so hard to just have a one size fits all. And I think that's something that we all struggle with, because we just want somebody to tell us, find this school, move your family there, go there, it'll be the best place for you. I know many of you have tried that. We know friends who've driven down to look at schools in other states and have tried different settings, and it is tricky to have to try to find the best place for your child. That being said, if you can change the mindset to how can I best support my child in the place that we are, I would encourage you to try to figure that out. And right on cue. Come on in, Charlie. He's all good. And that's a beautiful way to end. So thank you, Charlie. So follow your heart.